Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast. I'm Dan John. This is episode 177, and it shocks me to say that out loud every week. Remember, if you have questions, you'll send them to me at podcast@DanJohnUniversity.com. I'll do my best to answer each and every one. We do get a lot of questions sometimes that are hyper specific, and very often I'll just email the person back. But for the most part, I think, especially this week, our questions are pretty global. Before I even start, the Easy Strength Omni book is out, and somebody asked me a question about something that was in another book, and it was interesting because sometimes when I'm working on a new book or a new concept, what I realize is what confuses most people is the follow-up question. So I try to be very careful in my new book about staying right on with just a few things. Now, obviously, I add other stuff in there, but I wanted to talk about easy strength. But what often happens is someone will ask a question in a workshop and they'll say, what about if I want to do this? And then I'll answer that specific, small, one-on-one, one-person only question. And the person who hasn't been paying attention the whole time will brighten up, write a few things, incorrectly say what I said, put it on a forum. Someone will quote the forum, and pretty soon, my joke is usually we end up just doing bench press and curls again because everyone's so confused. So one of the things I'm striving to do, even on this podcast, is to provide as much clarity and then remind you as I go through the questions that I'm trying to answer this specific question. And sometimes the answer here doesn't fit the answer there. A good example would be if you're a high jumper and you ask me about hypertrophy or bodybuilding workouts, well, then I will say you're kind of an idiot because of Sir Isaac Newton and gravity and all that stuff. Sometimes a good tool works well here, but that tool doesn't work well there. So let's get started. We got a good question from Lee. You know, it's a short question, but it's wonderful. It's a good question. How often should someone do heavy leg work? Is it valuable to do heavy squats and deadlifts multiple times per week, or is less frequent exposure better? And of course, Lee, what you did by this question is you open up that entire matrix of training. And I mean the entire matrix of training. When I was lifting with Dick Knottmeyer, you said heavy leg work. I did heavy leg work 5 days a week for 7 years. Now, I want you to write that down when you get a second. 5 days a week for 7 years. Tuesdays and Saturdays, we did front squats and heavy jerks. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I snatched and clean and jerks. And did clean and jerks. 5 days a week, 7 years. Didn't matter what came up or what happened. I was in the weight room throwing weights over my head. For a while, I made the very best progress of my life, and then I got stuck. Now, lots of people offered me a lot of ideas about to unstick, but what helped me the best was simply, and this is be part of the question here, is I began to just march away to the point that Dave Turner had me do the 1 lift a day program. So let's listen to what I'm trying to say. For a long time, I had success working my legs hard 5 days a week. As I progressed higher and higher and higher, I had to reduce the volume, both in terms of reps and sets, but also in days of the week. I'm just going to say globally, that's the way most people probably should do things. If you look at older bodybuilding programs from the 1950s and 60s, you know, before the PED era, and I know everybody's clean online because they put their hand on their heart and they say so. But without PEDs, I don't know how you could do, you know, heavy legs, all the time, all year long, every day, every hour. I don't know how you do it. If you have any level of strength. Don't forget, I mean, my numbers were pretty good when I got stagnant. You know, I was at a 405 front squat, probably in the 370s on the clean and jerk, sneaking right around 300. I got 300 in the snatch a few times in training, but only a few times in meets. So I got stagnant lifting pretty good weights. When I went to the one lift a day program, that's when I snatched 314 and I cleaned 402 and I missed a jerk. But I could open up at any meet with 385, 175 kilos. So I think, Lee, I think you have to mentally think of a matrix on this. Now, if you're training like they did in the 1960s, 1970s bodybuilders, where you're doing, this would be kind of a typical program. Franco Columbu talked about it. Arnold talked about it. Reg Park talked about it. Al Order, the 4-time Olympic gold medalist in the discus, talked about it. Most programs at the time. But you would do workouts where you had the two big presses, the bench press and the military. There was usually a chin or something like that in most of the programs. That wasn't every program. There was the back squat. There was a deadlift or deadlift variation. And boy, I tell you one thing, they used to do a lot of deadlift variations. And then there would be the curl. And I mean, that is almost Pascal's Bosco workout from the 1950s. Pretty close to what Arnold said, pretty close to what Arnold told Dave Johns, is pretty a great bodybuilder. And Bill Grant, another great bodybuilder, he used that. So, and of course, very close to what Al Order did and the other discus throwers at the time. So back in the 60s, yeah, people would deadlift and squat in the same workout 3 days a week. Now, caveat time. Up there somewhere, I think it's in this part here, there's a great article on a fellow Utah State University discus thrower, LJ Sylvester. And LJ is doing a lot of deadlifts this one year. And his goal is he figures he's the world record holder when the article happens. And he says in the interview that if he can just get his deadlift over 400 pounds, then he thinks he can throw farther. Well, I want you to hear that number, 400. Right here are John Powell. John Powell has 2 bronze medals at the Olympics, was the world record holder, and he's a good friend of mine, passed away just a few months ago. In there, he's talking about in one of his seasons, he pulls a 603 deadlift in training, and he goes SB next to it in red, seasonal best. So just in about maybe 18-year period, discus throwers went from, trying to get a 400-pound deadlift to deadlifting over 600 every year. I tell those stories for a good point. I always try to tell stories for a good point. You have to be careful when you read some of those older books is what do you mean by load? So if you're a 230-pound guy, 220, and you're deadlifting three days a week, but you're deadlifting in the 300s or low 400s, you're going to be okay. If you're a 220, 230-pound guy and you're squatting 3 days a week for sets of 5, and the weights are in that 300 to 400-pound range, you probably can do it. So the issue with working your legs is always that combination of factors. If you're doing really high volume, like I have in my Mass Made Simple program, you squat basically twice a week for really high reps. And that's about all you do in the program. You do some complexes, you do some bench, you do some pressing, but mostly it's those high rep squats. And I've tried it, I've tried high rep squatting 3 days a week, and it doesn't work. You lose every other quality in the body. It's just hard to walk up a flight of stairs. You can't truly be athletic. And it's funny, you eat and you eat and you eat and you begin to lose weight and you don't feel good. And I think it's because you have massive overtraining. So if you're going to work your legs, and so let's just say you're going to work your squat and deadlift with high volume, you've got to keep the loads way down. I think you have to. Now listen, nothing I said is at all unique or groundbreaking. If you have high intensity, like if you're an Olympic lifter, I could see you probably doing more, because Olympic lifters, a triple is a lot of reps for an Olympic lifter. My best Olympic lifting, I don't think I ever did a set of 5 outside of something like a power snatch or a power clean. Maybe obviously back squats, but you just don't do a lot of high reps, so you can keep coming back in every day, because you're trying to teach your nervous system to be completely lit up when you do those exacting movements. For the general person, then you have to think this through. When I say squat, when I say deadlift, a follow-up would be that question I ask all the time. What do you mean by that? To make sure we're clear that when I say squat, you're not doing quarter squats 3 days a week. When I say deadlift, if you're doing trap bar deadlifts off of, and the bar is raised up on those higher handles, that's going to be a radically different hit on your body than the traditional powerlifting meet style. I mean, in my experience anyway, especially if you're a taller person. So it is a very good question, but you have to have the parameters kind of locked in. Let's just make it in a general sense. If you're doing high volume, you kind of have to control the loads. And you could probably go 3 days a week, 2 days a week, squat or deadlift. For most of us, 3 days a week, you could probably pull that off for 3 to 6 weeks and then naturally slide to 2 days a week. If you're doing high intensity, you could probably have more days a week, but you're going to have to really have your technique and a lot of other things locked down. Most people tend to morph into medium, which of course I don't like. I always joke about if your daughter comes home from college and she says, "Daddy, I met the love of my life," and you go, "Well, what's he like?" And she goes, "Yeah, he's okay, whatever." That's kind of weird. To me, that's how I feel about medium. It's like, that's okay, whatever. If you're going to go in a program like what I would have most of my more elite athletes use when appropriate, something along the 1 lift a day, we probably would have a heavy squat workout. Probably try to get that on Monday or Tuesday. Most of my athletes compete on Saturday, or Sunday. That's why I say Monday or Tuesday. So you have plenty of time to, undo any of the damage that might show up. In fact, in the 1960s and 70s, many of the greatest throwers of all time used to have their hardest weight workout right after track meets. So they go through the shot or discus and then go to the gym and have the hardest workout of the week. So they had a full week to recover before the next meet. And I still think there's a hint of wisdom to that. The deadlift, I don't recommend the deadlift in most 1 lift a day programs because you're going so heavy. It would be something you might even want to consider once every other week. You could have power cleans 1 week, deadlifts the next, power clean, deadlift. That might do it. So it's going to depend. Now, if you're using machines or you're using machines, you're going to be able to do a lot more volume, a lot more days a week because machines don't have the hit of the barbell. If you're doing goblet squats with kettlebells, obviously that's going to be a different hit than heavy front squats. I don't care what size kettlebell you have, it's not going to, load-wise. I mean, a hard goblet squat is going to be 32 kilos. A hard double kettlebell front squat is going to be, let's say, 232s. You're still barely looking what's on a normally loaded barbell. So you might be able to get more volume in with kettlebells, more volume in with machine family. And then when you walk over to the platform for the deadlift and the squat variations, I think you're going to have to think that through a little bit. And I would have I would have a few monitors in place. If you decide to squat 3 days a week and deadlift 3 days a week, using a more modern program, not those 4 or 5 sets of 10 programs from the 1960s or 5 sets of 5s, which is, a little more modern, still a good program. You might have to have more monitors in your life, like morning heart rate. You wake up in the morning, take your heart rate. Wouldn't be a bad idea to have blood pressure. And of course, my favorite one is, and I always joke about this, is if I walk into a room and everyone backs away and hides, I'm probably overtraining a little bit. So it's nice to have somebody in your life who can say, yeah, you're being a jerk. And that you should hear that is, you're overtraining. So I think there's some value here. Over at Dan John University, you'll notice that we tend to do hinges and squats in almost every workout every time, because we use a lot of members of the hinge and squat family. I think you can probably hip thrust 3 days a week. I'm not sure you can max deadlift 3 days a week. I think you can goblet squat 5, 6, 7 days a week. I'm not sure you can do really hard front squats. I've done 3 days a week and it's brutal. So it's going to be one of those things where you have to kind of wire your head into a bit of a matrix, think it through a little bit. But the nice thing is those 2 to 10 minutes of thinking that you do, going back through your journal and looking at what works for you is gold. I know what works for me. For me, it's 3 days a week. In 3 days a week, I do the squat movement, but the loads are always appropriate and fairly easy for me to recover from. So when I'm training for an Olympic lifting meet, I know front squat 3 days a week. Sometimes it's just 2 sets of 2. Sometimes it's just 3 sets of 3. Sometimes it's kind of weirdly light. Often it's with chains, but it's the movement I'm working on, not necessarily the load. Again, Lee, as in all these things, your mileage will vary, but as long as you use your journal and some kind of monitors in your life for overtraining clues, I think it'll help you out a lot. Good question, and thank you. Okay, we got a question from Jordan. First, I'm interested in learning the Olympic lifts. I've talked to a coach in my city, but the cost of their gym and coaching is prohibitive at this moment. Do you think it's viable for someone to teach themselves the Olympic lifts on online and tutorials? That's kind of how me and Marty Gallagher learned them, so I would say, yeah, you can. And it would be better to pay the price up front and be taught properly. If it's relevant, I am a 28-year-old male with around 8 years experience in gym, doing mostly powerlifting, bodybuilding style training. Okay, that's question number 1. Yeah, I mean, I taught myself the Olympic lifts, and then the first time I trained with Dick Notmeyer, he and Pete Hoffman sort of made fun of my technique. Is it worth learning it correctly in the beginning? Yeah. The thing is, too, if you can't afford the gym membership, can you afford to have a couple of sessions? I think you can learn a ton online. I think so. But the problem is you don't have that real-time feedback, that loop. I have a thing called the inner circle, and I've coached, a third of the members this year how to do the Olympic lifts, basically with them videoing and us commenting. So it is possible. They're much older than you are. Some of them have some real mobility and flexibility issues, but they got in it and they tried. So I think you can learn with some feedback, even though it's going to be delayed because of, you got to take the movie, you got to take the film, you got to, send it to the person. The person has to watch it and send it back. When I was at Utah State, and I used to send my workouts to Dick Notmeyer. I would mail them to him, and then he would read them and mail me back his insights. And that usually took about 2 weeks. By the time I got, or 3 weeks, by the time I got the letter, I was usually doing something else already anyway. But it was still great to have those letters, and I have a lot of them still. The instant feedback of learning the Olympic lifts helps a lot. But, here's the deal, as I say this all the time, Jordan. In 5 years, you're going to be 33. And if you learn the Olympic lifts, in 5 years, you'll be 33 and you know the Olympic lifts. If you don't, in 5 years, you'll still be 33, but you won't know the Olympic lifts. And I know that sounds silly, but I think there's truth to it. I would learn them, and I would use the online resources. I would use books. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Tommy Kono's weightlifting Olympic style. I think that's the best book for a beginner. However, it's really hard to find, and I wouldn't pay the money they want. I have a lot of books over there on my shelf on Olympic lifting. There's a lot of good resources on the internet now. By the way, the best parts of Tommy Kono's work can be found on a website called The Titan Slacks of Denzo Ban. And I'm serious, that's the name of it. It's a marvelous resource and well worth your time. Type in on the search engine Tommy Kono. Again, getting back to John Powell, I've got John's notes from the Olympics back here. I'm just going through his Olympic preparation notes. And, you'll see something simple, arch back in the discus throw. Arch back is a standard thing for the Olympic lifts. So if you don't learn posture when you go into the Olympic lifts, that'll probably be the thing that you'll get hammered on the most by a good coach. Your posture, your catch positions, you're staying tall. We used to call it joint by joint lockout, where all the joints stack. I've heard that phrase used recently too, stacking the joints. Yeah, so I think you can, but there's your first question. Jordan, just for the record, you asked a second question. I don't want to answer it now, but if you would email the podcast, maybe you and I can have a telephone call. It's a question, gentle listener. It's a personal question, and I'm in no place right now to answer it. Okay, thank you. Jamie asks a question that I actually like a lot. Jamie says, I donate blood as often as possible, which where I live means once every 8 weeks. I think I'm about the same. Here where I live, American Red Cross, I think I donate 5 times a year. 8 weeks is right about the exact same. The educational material that they give me when I go says not to do intense exercise for 24 hours after the donation, and I follow that. So what I always do is I donate after I train. So I work out in the morning and then donate. So I also tend to do relatively easier workout the first day back instead of doing something very intense. I think there's some wisdom of that. I stopped doing the Power Red donation. That's when they take 2 whole units of red blood cells, but giving your plasma back, because I literally couldn't recover. And then I did my annual physical, and my doctor thought I had internal bleeding because my hematocrit numbers were so low, which is kind of funny when you say it out loud. The question from Jamie. I'm just wondering if you have any further insight as to what I should be thinking about or doing with respect to structuring my training relative to regular blood donations. Okay, first off, Jamie, if you're a male, you are probably doing one of the smartest things you can for your heart health. Now, it's odd, but I know that certain athletes are always trying to drive their hematocrit levels up. Now, this is not my information. This comes from doctors, Doctors Dan and Mary Eads. And they make a good point, is that males are rusting from the inside. And that's why one of the reasons that we have heart attack issues. Now, it's interesting because we're so far ahead on heart attacks, but one of the things they give you, at least what I understand, is when you come in, is they give you magnesium, which is funny because that's one of the foundational things I take to help myself sleep. So keeping your hematocrit levels low, now women have a natural way to do that. Keeping your hematocrit levels low seems to help with your cardiovascular health. We humans have been attacked by parasites. I had one from the Middle East for millennia. And so we naturally store our iron to stay healthy. Without the parasites, though, our iron is sprinting ahead. So for your heart health, donating blood and flossing your teeth are weirdly good advice for your heart health. The other thing I just want to mention, everybody, is what a difference it makes. Because of the way I am and certain other things about my lifestyle, I always donate what's called trauma bags. I didn't get something when I was young, so I can donate to newborns, but they always take my blood and use it the next day. Well, I'm a trauma bag guy. It makes me kind of happy, and they say it's, of course, at the American Red Cross, they tell you everything you do is wonderful. So, but that makes me happy, and I want to make sure I keep myself in good enough condition to stay in the trauma bag line. They do now. Oh, another thing too. The other great thing about donating, it's the only time of the year I eat cookies. because I figure I just donated blood, so I get myself a treat and I sit down and there's a cookie called Lorna Doones, man. And it's the best part of giving blood, if you ask me. I couldn't tell you what a Lorna Doone is 99% of the time, but when I give blood, I eat Lorna Doones. So, and Cheez-Its. I eat Cheez-Its too. Yeah. I drink water and eat Cheez-Its. And I'll allow myself about it, a little bit, one thing and I'm out of there. The best thing I like after I give blood is that feeling of superiority I have over everybody else who didn't give blood that day. If you're just donating normally, probably 24 hours, and even then I find 18 hours. I tend to come, like what you do, Jamie, I kind of come in with a soft landing the next day. That's why I like to give blood on Monday and Wednesdays, because I know that Tuesday's a mobility walking day and Thursday's a mobility walking day for me. So I do that. So, by scheduling my blood donations, I think I really help myself with my training. I try to stay away from contests when I do donate. I think, obviously 2 weeks ahead of time is perfectly fine for the sports I do. Now, if you're a triathlete or a runner, you have to think that through a little bit. But yeah, I think you're okay. And just keep reminding yourself, Jamie, what a difference you're making on the planet. You are helping somebody when they are at the most need. When someone needs your blood, that is and it truly is. It is the gift of life, and I salute you. And if you're, for those who haven't been giving blood, consider it. If you ever want to hear excuses from people, you can either say I exercise every day, or I donate blood, and you'll hear more excuses for both of those, or I eat healthy, and then people tell you why they can't. But it really does make a difference in the world. So thank you, Jamie. And schedule the day after, schedule mobility and a walk, and I think you'll be just fine. All right, good question, Jamie. Thank you so much. Okay, we've got a question from Greg here. And this is kind of interesting what Greg says. I just finished up Mass Made Simple program a couple days ago, and I want to send you a follow-up on how the program went. I did the program in 7 weeks, so there is an option, folks, where you can just choose to do it, the 2 workouts a week over 7 weeks versus the 14. And really, scheduling is going to be hard for some people, so I appreciate that. And he says here, 3 kids at home and a busy schedule. Yeah, I started the program at 140 pounds and ended at 150. Now, that's pretty impressive, because, if you're, for those who are 200 pounders, you're thinking that's almost a 15 pound. And for those in the mid 200s, that's a 20 pound increase. That's a lot of increase. 140 to 150, that's game changing. Increased my bench press by 35 pounds, military by 20. Wow. And squats by a whole bunch of reps. Well, that's highly technical, but okay. Overall, I enjoyed the program quite a bit. It really pushed me and taught me new techniques for increasing weight. I underestimated how difficult it would be to eat enough to gain the weight, but really saw the results increasing my protein shake intake. Yeah, one of the hardest things, I remember being in college and I was sitting there just shoveling food down, and one of the young ladies sitting with us, she said, "Oh, I would do anything to eat, all I wanted." And I remember thinking, yeah, I ate all I wanted about 15 minutes ago. I'm shoving this in. I had a problem, especially at Utah State. I would show up, say, 231, and and then because I was throwing the shot, discus, and hammer, and Olympic lifting and front squatting and running hills, I'd go 231 to 225 to 220 to 218, and I couldn't keep my weight on. And I know that sounds, it was a real issue, because, when you're dropping that kind of weight, you're also, it's hitting my ability to recover. I was really getting pulled at both ends. And of course, I was also a very academic student. So it is hard to shovel down the amount of food it takes in a mass building program. And again, if you're driving around in your car eating your, bean burritos and your hamburger, that's good. Okay, that's what you do. But you don't stop doing it. you shovel down the hamburger, then you shovel down another one, then you shovel down another one. And when you're satiated, then you have to eat even more. As far as the next program, I'm trying to decide between the Southwood program or an easy strength program. I'm wondering how long I should go before another Mass Made Simple program. Well, okay. The Southwood program is good. It's very good. But where you're at right now, after putting on all this mass, I think you'd want to kind of strive to keep it. Now, in the book, I actually think in Mass Made Simple, I think I talk about it. But I usually ask people to wait 6 weeks at least as long as Mass Made Simple took. In your case, that'd be 7. But I'd even push it in your case, being having 3 kids and a busy schedule. I would push it even farther out. Let's just make up a number, 3 or 4 months. And I'm just winging it. But enough time that you've forgotten some of the lessons from the first time through, okay? Now, as for what you should do in the meantime, I got a new book just came out called the Easy Strength Omnibook. And if you just go to easystrengthomnibook.com, you can purchase it. But what we began to see, especially with my high school athletes, is we would shift over into something akin that was a little bit different than the easy strength I would teach now. But it was close. I mean, close enough, where you're doing push, pull, hinge, squat, loaded carry 2 to 3 times a week. And the rep schemes are, honestly, for you, after all that volume, 3 sets of 3 in a press, in a pull, in a squat, in a deadlift, and then loaded carries. Maybe you want to even shift to something like Reg Park's 5 sets of 5. Or, and this is just spitballing, you do 5 sets of 5, one workout, 3 sets of 3 the next, 5 sets of 3, and then 3 sets of 5, and then back to the 5 sets of 5. Just so that, by the way, I want you to lift 3 days a week. I just gave you 4 things. So you would go 5 by 5, 3 by 3, 3 by 5, 5 by, so this is the next Monday. The 3 by 5, the 5 by 5 is Wednesday, and push that off. And just keep, moving the big weights and trying to move yourself in a direction where you're getting stronger in that time. You've taken care of your mass for a little bit. Work on your strength. I like easy strength for you. I like this little idea I just came up with for you. Honestly, I think the best thing you could do is go to Dan John University and just do the workout generator and maybe even practice a few things. Because I don't want you to lose that military, especially. 20-pound increase in the military in that short a time is pretty good, because the military press stalls for almost everybody I know. And of course, in the comments, we'll always get in the comments, oh, my military press went from 82 pounds to 300 pounds in one weekend, because that's what you get in the comments. But for most of us, I was young. I could add 20, 30 pounds to my bench press, just by sliding my hands to a different grip. But my military just flattened out for years. I think I was probably military pressing in the close to 100 as a 9th grader, not much more as a 10th grader, not much more as an 11th grader, and not much more when I first met Dick Naumeyer. It wasn't until much later when I really took the press seriously that I got any real numbers on it. I ended up with a single with 300, but I cleaned it and pressed it, not off the rack. But yeah, for most people, 20 pounds in 7 weeks, that's good stuff. So I would say, let's think about either something simple, the workout generator, an easy strength template, or that little idea I came up with you for the push, pull, hinge, squat, loaded carry, 5 by 5, 3 by 3, 3 by 5, 5 by 3. Good stuff. And congratulations. And let me know when you start this again. I'd like to be a little cricket on the wall. I watch Pinocchio, so there you go. Looks like this will be our last question. Scott asks this. He goes, I understand you don't give medical advice, but given your years of experience of training athletes, I'm sure you've had to deal with continuing workout while sick. Oh yeah, no, that's not medical advice. Here's what Coach Lahati told us. If you're burning a temperature, don't train. If you're stuffy, congested, you can train. And so for him, it was the temperature. And as simple as that was, I have kind of found that to be true. And the other thing about a high temperature is if an athlete shows up at the facility with a high temperature, for what I'm out of my, I don't know if it's flus or colds or whatever. Athletes with high temperatures seem to spread that around and I know that coughing and sneezing and stuff like that spreads it around, but the high temperature seems to make it go much faster. I don't know why. I have heard you talk before about having green light, yellow light, and red light training days, and realize this can be vary by individual and by illness. I have found that I can maintain consistent volume with the head cold. Yes. So colds, for me, it's allergies. But flu-like symptoms present a problem, especially if they continue 5 to 7 days or longer. I am approaching 65 years of age, and I'm dedicated to the following 3 days a week, 52 weeks a year park bench program, the 3x52 program. That's good to hear, Scott. To maintain strength and body composition. Missing a week or more of workouts can feel like a big setback for older folks. Yeah, make sure I come back to that point, because that's really a good point, Scott. Have you come across anything in your experience or research that identifies the positive benefits of training through sickness? Listen, I like to train in every situation I possibly can. If the gym is frozen, I like to train. If it's boiling hot, I like to train. If I am sleep deprived because of travel or life, I like to train. I like to train when I feel great. I like to train when I feel bad. Because for me, training is part of the habits of my life that keep me going. Scott, I'm thinking you and I are the same. So let's just say this. Let's start with red light stuff, okay? Red light, I would say diarrhea, vomiting, and high temperature. I don't want you in my gym if you're having issues with stuff coming out of any end of your mouth. Sneezing, hacking, stuff like that. We'll move that into another area. Red light can also mean if you just feel bad. I obviously have trained hungover, and I'm not proud of that, but you do. I have trained the mornings of weddings and funerals and everything else. The day my mom died, I worked out because I had to go meet with my master's thesis advisory group. But I worked out just to recenter myself. With my dad, I didn't have time. I had to do all my grades and get on a flight. But yeah, even with funerals and some of life's hardships, I still work out. So, let's put certain things as red light. And by the way, I'm fine, gentle listener, if you red light like your birthday, your spouse's birthday, whatever days you decide, high holy days, whatever is important in your year. I mean, or your job. I have no issues with that. For me, I'll even get a workout in like on Thanksgiving morning. I won't work out very hard, but I'll do something like my 8-minute perfect workout or something like that, just to kind of, feel good and move good. Yellow. Okay, so let's go to yellow because I think that's more your question in a sense. You're sneezing, you're hacking, you're coughing, your eyes hurt. You get the, you got a little bit of. In my experience, especially with my athletes, we tend to train through that if there's no temperature. If there is a temperature, I'd prefer you go home, do whatever hygiene you need to do, wrap yourself in a blanket and sleep through it. I'd rather you, and for some athletes, by the way, illness is the body's chance to say, we are overtrained. Illness, injury, age seem to have almost the same effects as how do I say that? Those are the big three. So with injury, illness, and age, people tend to get in this position here. They kind of tighten everything up. They lean forward. You look like you've been at a desk too long. And if you're starting to really feel all that, my job is to tell you to go home, sleep it off, get liquids in you as best you can, get proteins into you as best you can, get your minerals and your electrolytes in you as best you can, get through it. And then when you come back, my job is to straighten you back up, get your posture back where it needs to be, get yourself moving in straight lines again. This is actually good. And then of course, green light, that's it. Now I'll say this, I was about to say any other day is green light, but for a lot of listeners, and you might feel great, but life won't let you work out. And that's why I think it's so important personally to have a home gym, to have, I like to wake up before everybody else just so I have some quiet time. But also too, when the girls were young, that's when I would get in one of my workouts. I mean, I would be making them breakfast, just after doing a whole bunch of discus drills or whatever I needed to do that day. In hindsight, I should have spent more time with appropriate technique and easy strength and loaded carries, and I'd have thrown a lot farther. But, I didn't know at the time because I hadn't invented it yet. This is a good question, Scott. So, and every listener, I think it might be a good idea for you to kind of list out, or even go back, go through your journals, go through whatever and say, this is when I was sick here. This is what I did. This worked, this didn't. Write down, maybe there's a number, like once your temperature hits this number, you really seem to start having issues. For example, I tend to get very, when I was a teacher, I could almost tell you exactly when I was going to get sick. Christmas break and the first week or two of June, because when I turned the engine off as a teacher and went, I got sick. Now my allergies have swum back around a little bit in certain areas. So I've noticed my allergies been kind of kicking me in the face a little bit in the last year or so. And as we know, allergies flow through, flow in, flow out. And maybe in a couple of years, I'll be fine again. So that's how I look at things, okay? So write down what you would say is a red light situation. I think this would be a great chart for you. Great, put on your wall. When I feel the falling, when I'm sick, I get a headache that goes right here. That's my flu headache, sick. If I get the flu headache, sick, I should wrap myself in blankets, don't have this light on, and just power through some sleep. Yellow light, I like this. For me, I can train through allergies, though, I do make some disgusting noises outside the gym to clear my head. And then, of course, green light would be ideally every other day, but there's other stuff that comes up. So good question, Scott. I hope that helped. It was kind of fun. And don't forget, folks, he makes the big point. If you work out 52 times a year, 3 days a week, and you have any kind of intelligent eating, eat like an adult, and you get your sleep in, and you do mobility as appropriate, you walk as appropriate, a lot of your dreams will come true. Okay, it doesn't have to be too crazy. Well, there it goes. That was easy. The questions were good. They were simple for me to answer. I really appreciate it, folks. Again, if you have questions, send them to the podcast to me at podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. Each and every week I sit down here in my office with all of my resources and my stuff, and I answer your questions. And until next time, let's all keep on lifting and learning.